Philip, we've been talking a lot about the Bank of Canada and their past mistakes. I think it's fair to say they didn't get it right. But what, in your view, have they been making up for lost time with these large interest rate hikes? Is there anything else they can be doing or should be doing to help tackle inflation now?
I think they're on the right path. Their job is complicated by the fact that the dollar remains quite weak. If the dollar had been rising as it normally does with high energy prices, that would dampen import prices and make the Bank of Canada's job easier. But clearly, despite the boom we're seeing in oil and gas prices, we're not seeing the inflow of investment into Canada that would normally accompany an energy boom because investors don't think that this government is going to allow the proper development of oil and gas and allow it to reach markets where it can get a high price. So the Bank of Canada's job is complicated by a lot of the mistakes we're seeing in government policy. So they're doing the best they can with the tools that are available to them, and with the frankly the policies, the unhelpful policies that many governments across this country are adopting and making it more difficult to lower prices.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. The impact now of the bank raising interest rates is, of course, for example, anyone who owns a home through a variable rate mortgage is paying more interest. This has put a squeeze on a lot of people. It's led to a lot of politicians starting to talk about how to offer relief for those rising prices. But the challenge, of course, is the more money you pour in, you pour more fuel on the fire that is the problem in the first place. So, what is your view on some of the political responses that are being proposed in terms of trying to help Canadians endure or sort of mitigate the damage or the impact of these higher prices?
Yeah. Well, we've seen a lot of governments, and not just the federal government, which promised nearly $9 billion of relief to Canadian households in the spring budget. But we saw in Quebec and Ontario, those governments mailed basically $500 to every household. Alberta slash gas taxes, that's becoming increasingly popular. And all of these are obviously well intentioned. They're trying to help people. But, we talked at the beginning about how the core cause of inflation is this imbalance between demand and supply. And every action we take that boosts demand further is just going to, frankly, in the long run, worsen the inflationary pressures. The best thing governments could do would be to boost supply, but as I said, the problem is that that's going to take years to, for example, change regulations that make it easier to build housing in the Toronto area, or allow more interprovincial trade, or try to do things that would boost investment in oil and gas. All of these would take time. So, there isn't a lot governments can do right now. That's why it's very much up, the Bank of Canada is, as the saying goes, the only game in town when it comes to fighting inflation. It's their responsibility. They're the organization that has a responsibility to control inflation. And at this point, they're the only organization that is even capable and determined to start to bring prices under control.
I wanted to get your thoughts on, I think you've probably already answered it by saying the bank is the only game in town, but in a lot of cases, the prescription is for governments to help tamp down demand by cutting back spending. But in this case, as you noted with the pandemic spending, a lot of this money has just ended up in Canadians' bank accounts. So it's not really within the government's control to withdraw that potential demand. Do you think that complicates things in terms of what a normal response might be for a government trying to reduce demand?
Oh, very much so. Chrystia Freeland in her spring budget talked about how all these savings, the Bank of Canada estimates it's somewhere in the order of $200 to $300 billion. All these savings that Canadians built up during the pandemic, she called preloaded stimulus. The problem is, the government does not control the dispensation of that stimulus. Households do. And it seems now, for example, clear that Canadians, after 3 years of being cooped up, are very determined to travel. That they're, no matter what the price of gasoline or aviation fuel, they're going to fly and they're going to travel this summer because they've been cooped up for 3 years. And that's one reason why prices are, particularly energy prices, are proving to be so sticky. Normally when you see $2 a liter gasoline prices, you'd start seeing demand starting to fall, but households are proving quite resilient, and that's helping to keep prices high and making it more difficult to bring down prices in the short term.